We'll start here. This is the soil fertility, or we call this the 4R lesson. I'm John Hurd. I do the soil fertility extension work with Manitoba Agriculture. And Steve Crittenden with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada also has some studies just getting underway here that are important to talk about. And Adam Gurr, Adam, come on up here. It's on film. There's quite a bit of credit that needs to go to Adam on this. Adam's our host farmer here, but not only is he the host farmer, but he's also kind of the researcher here. Adam, you just want to tell us a little bit about your company, Agri-Truth?
Yeah, you betcha. So I farm full time with my family. We're a cereal and oilseeds farm, and then we have do on-farm research through a company called Agri-Truth Research, and it's just field scale agronomic scientific research that we do. It's related to questions we have on the farm, but more so related to things that industry is interested in looking at. So we do quite a bit of contract research on a field scale across the farm now as well.
Okay. So. Good. And I'm glad you were here. I didn't have to put up this slide, but what it is basically that real research, randomized, replicated strips done with field scale equipment. These are from some of our wheat studies several years ago. Interesting, you know, we can use the yield monitor, but generally we're using grain carts with weigh scales on them to get us hard numbers. And this particular year, we did a number of wheat trials around the province. And one thing that we acknowledge with this on-farm testing, particularly in Adam's case, because either you've got good fields or good techniques, but in research, we often use a value in the statistics called CV, or coefficient of variation, as a measure of how discerning the research is, whether you're able to identify differences. So I'm going to embarrass you, Don, in a minute, but your CVs, what are they typically for studies you're involved in?
Like it seems to be a lot like in that 2-3%.
Yeah, 2-3%.
And that would LSDs would be.
Don, in your best small plot research, what do you yearn for?
10%.
Yes.
And it's often between 10 and 20%.
Yeah.
Because one small plot with one treatment and its replicate next door might easily be off by 10 to 20% because there's such a small area. Mm-hmm. But I say that Adam's 1 mile long strips have more consistency because they don't have that patchiness from just a few square meters, right?
Yeah.
You can have a tremendous amount of variability across within that plot, but two plots next to each other, it's the same amount of variability. You're going over the same hilltop and same low spot or whatever.
So that's what we really appreciate, is that, and you're able to identify differences as small as 3 to 5 bushels per acre being significant if there's differences there, and that's just beyond the scope of a lot of small plot research. So it just brings a whole new idea to the table. Of course, you can't study as many treatments as a Cindy Grant style study with 24, 25 treatments, 30 treatments. Can't do that, but you replicate things 4 times. How many treatments can you reasonably go to?
Well, we've gone as high as 10, I guess. We have a new one that we started this spring.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing 40-foot pockets, and so it's 10 treatments replicated 4 times. But typically, 3-4 treatments would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. And I want to mention today, Adam's generously sharing with us publicly some of the information from his long-term trials, but generally, the information that you produce, you have a subscription for, and so people would purchase that and then they would see the hot off the press. So we're grateful that you're sharing some of your neat long-term stuff with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things we wanted to do, at least this is what I say, prompted you. Study number 1 we're going to look at is one that looks at where Adam has applied his base rate of nitrogen and phosphorus fertility, and then either scaled it up 30% or down 30%. And the down 30%, I understand that because we have a number of people saying farmers over-fertilizing, we can back off without impacting yields or profitability. And in that camp, Don and my colleague in North Dakota, Dave Franzen, did very interesting studies 10 years ago on zero-till with wheat and corn, and found that in early stage zero-till for the first 5 years, you actually need about 20 to 25 pounds more nitrogen than conventional. I think it's presuming that you're immobilizing more nitrogen, so you need more. But after 5 years, his observations were you actually need less nitrogen in a zero-till system. And we always kind of equated that at some point you'd reach an equilibrium where you needed equal amounts. His studies seem to show that he could get away with 50 pounds less nitrogen in a mature zero-till. A few of us found that a bit unbelievable, right, Don? Yeah. And not only that, but to think further, where's that coming from? Maybe it's coming at the expense of organic matter, depletion. So, or maybe it's a more efficient system. Nevertheless, we didn't test it, really, but Adam kind of put that to the test in this study, where he's looking at both his standard rate, 30% less, 30% more. And I have here visually, if you want to see the actual numbers, you can get a subscription or go online. You have this online, Adam. But the thing I find intriguing is that the yields that you started this in 2013, and you just finished harvest 2 days ago, so we have some hot off the press numbers. Your base yields are envious to begin with. I just need to read them to the group here. 2013, wheat, 84 bushels the acre. 2014, we didn't have a crop taken there.
Yeah, it was too wet to see.
Too wet. 2015, wheat, 65 bushels. 2016, canola, 63 bushels. 2017, wheat, 98. Then canola, 58. Soybeans, 42. Last year, canola, 48. And 2 days ago, believe it or not, the base rate, 101 bushels of wheat. These yields are much higher than provincial averages, but they do show what I think really yield potential with these various. And I've just graphed them here compared to, how do these yields compare to the base standard fertility rate? And Adam, you've written this up. I've just captured some of your own comments. The first 3 or 4 years, yields were equal. High fertility, low fertility. For the first several years, there was little difference in yields. And so the low input was actually more profitable. Less money spent on fertilizer. It isn't until 5 years in, and then we start to see this deviation from the base fertility line, much higher yields with the higher rates, and again, lower yields with the lower rates. And so the recent year profitability has tended to favor the higher or increased rates of nitrogen and phosphate. And your overall average so far is showing some increased profitability to the higher rates.
Yeah.
So we find this quite interesting for a number of things. One is, well, if I'm just an average grower or less than average grower, probably those low rates are okay for me because I'm not hitting those yields. But if I'm if I have the yield potential, the type of system to get those higher yields, it's just showing that higher fertility is needed to achieve those and achieve that profitability. And to go a little further, you did a bit of a nutrient budget to see, well, what's happening within my system. And the thing the kind of subliminal message here today is phosphorus. Phosphorus tended to be rather depleted in that high yield or with these yields with the lower rates. And that's not surprising. We see that happening across Manitoba with higher yields of crops. We've been seeing phosphorus depletion in some of our cropping systems. So let's just talk a little bit more about that phosphorus, because we're going to go from research only 2 days old to some stuff that's older. But we call this classic because we've had nothing since to replace it. Have we, Don?
Well, until Adam stuff.
Yeah. Until
this is
Adam
warm
stuff.
up for Adam's next
Yeah.
experiment.
This was maybe a bit of a teaser that got Adam looking at this. In the 80s, there was some work done looking at, well, what is there any benefit to having soils built to a higher fertility level versus just subsisting at low fertility levels and putting on what the crop needs? And that's this blue line is one where basically seed place fertilizer at like 10, 20, 30, or 40 pounds of phosphate went down each year. And you can see there's a nice yield response to that.